Well, the action plan basically is at different levels. You have a social action plan, and you can have a health action plan. You have a political action plan. So a lot of the action plan really depends on how you define the action plan. And there's no doubt that the international community, those that are oriented to children and some levels, is actually going on. UNICEF, Save the Children, organizations like Humanity International, I'm just naming few, Disability Rights International. So there's a cadre of a good number of disability or children's rights organizations. And even when we were there in the institution, we actually met up with some of these other international organizations like UNICEF that was there, providing some levels of services to some degree connected in some way with the institutions. But the depth and breadth of their support was basically like putting like a Band-Aid on a bad situation. It wasn't really anything that we saw or I saw that basically was going to lead towards anything that was going to have major reform or change, and in particular, improving community care and family support. So our concern is the focus has to be on closing institutions and at the same time making sure that the families are going to be supported in the community to care for them who have these disabilities. And from a medical standpoint, that's where I come in, is trying to see what I can do as a neurologist with the AN, or for me as a neurologist with other international or national disability health organization to see what we can do. So since before I left for Ukraine and since I've been home in the United States, I've already had a number of meetings with different organizations about what do we do, what should we do. And so I do have some meetings coming up with people in Ukraine that are Ukrainian healthcare providers. Because I think the key thing with all this is that a lot of it has to be accepted by the Ukrainians themselves. The Ukrainians themselves have to accept it that they want reform and change in health. And if the Ukrainians don't feel they need it or can't do it or any other reason for not accepting it, there's only so much the outside world can do to Ukraine. But there's lots of forces that are positive forces that are happening. One, there's money. There's a lot of billions and billions of dollars that are flooding into Ukraine for military aid and humanitarian aid. So there's money. And the other part about it is the what's deemed to be the reality that Ukraine does want to go more westernized, maybe join NATO, become a part of the EU. And with all those things together, there's going to be certain things that they're going to have to mandate to do that. And one of them is caring for their citizens, human rights. So human rights is generally always tied to any organization or country that is looking to join up with other organizations that are on the West. And so human rights is going to have to be on their docket in Ukraine. So they're going to have to now and in the future have to prove and show. And we in the international community, including myself and the connections I have, want to be there with them as partners and realize that there's just this long-term cultural nature. Unlike the United States. The United States was just like that 50 years ago, and we got a lot of problems still in the United States. So I have to, in my own mind, as I'm thinking this through, try not to be overly judgmental and almost like throw them right now under the bus for what they do. Ignorance is bliss, I guess you could say that, but that's only goes so far. They still have access to the internet and the world. They know what it is. But again, I think from a philosophical, cultural standpoint, if you're born into a society, you're raised a certain way, and you're blinded by all the information about the culture of people with developmental disabilities, then how do you expect they're going to be treated unless that image is changed? So part of the plan of strategy that would have to change has to go to the core about changing the value that these countries think about people with developmental disability, that they have worth and value and need attention. If none of that's done, it's always going to be a continuing pushing, and that's going to be a slow, slog to kind of get anything done.